I can't think of either a remotely funny or interesting intro for this one, so I'm just not even going to bother.
Hello everyone, thought I'd just jump on here real quick and debunk Jean-Paul Sartre.
A tad strange to debunk a guy who died 42 years ago, but hey, if you have an interesting point to make, I won't necessarily judge.
For saying this, nature is mute.
Okay, first off, this video is called Atheism Debunked, and yet you pick a quote to respond to that has essentially nothing to do with atheism? Well, that's just a strange move on your part. Also, I tried to find the primary source for this quote from Sartre, and I could not find anything that would count as a first-hand account. Instead, it was primarily people with the same views as this guy saying essentially what he's about to say. So I have no idea if this quote is taken out of context or not, and the fact that the quote is exactly 3 words long honestly makes it seem like there's more to this than the presenter is telling us. I'm not saying for sure he is, but do you see the issue with not giving proper context to the quote you're addressing?
Now, nothing could be any further from the truth, and that's what Terence McKenna said.
Terence McKenna also believed that apes evolved into Homo sapiens because they ingested magic mushrooms and popularized the idea that the world was going to end in 2012 because the Mayans predicted it.
Who replied with this. He said, nature isn't mute, it's just you're deaf.
I mean, with how many psychedelics he did, auditory hallucinations are not entirely out of the question.
Right, and that's absolutely the case. Our senses have been shut down or limited to the myopic apertures of the 5 sense organs. You know, taste, scent, touch, sight, and the old hearing as well.
There's actually been an agreement among neuroscientists for a very long time that we have more than 5 senses, including things like itch, temperature, and balance. This is because if something is a sense has nothing to do with sense organs, it instead has to do with if there are specific receptors that react to stimuli to gather information about the world. In the case of taste, for example, these receptors are in the taste buds. I also want to note, what does it mean that our senses have been shut off exactly? Are the sensory receptors just not working like they should? Is it possible that we're not actually tasting or feeling? And if so, what am I doing when I taste things and feel things?
But is there not a much vaster reality at play here? What is consciousness?
Awareness.
How can you actually see me right now? If we see with our eyes, how do we see our dreams?
We don't. Our dreams are essentially hallucinations.
Right? There's 4 points up for grabs here. Okay, most people normally say, well, with my eyes. But then, of course, you need your brain. You need light in the room or just outside of yourself. And then you also need consciousness. So what is consciousness?
Didn't you already ask this?
That's the question. Consciousness is nature itself. You are life itself.
Noted neurobiologist David Bowie, not to be confused with the rock star. I should also note that nature just means the physical world, so therefore to say that consciousness is nature means you're saying consciousness is the physical world. And to be blunt, I'm not even sure what that means. This is the same issue I have with the claim that we are life itself. We are all alive, obviously, but what does it mean to be life itself? For that matter, what does it mean to be nature? You haven't properly established any of these terms, so as such, you aren't actually communicating anything to the viewer. Wow, a New Ager saying things that are utterly nonsensical upon even the slightest evaluation? Color me completely unsurprised.
So here's the all-important thing. How can nature be mute? You are nature, right? Carbon, calcium, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen. You are everything that's seemingly outside of yourself. You are consciousness. You are life. You are energy itself. You are God itself, although people don't like that word anymore.
Am I the only one who wants to commit ego death out of spite while watching this?
So how can you be mute? How can I be mute? You can hear what I'm saying right now, right?
I'm actually speaking telepathically to my microphone.
So we don't live in this cold Cartesian physics-based universe, which is all mechanistic. We live in, first and foremost, an organism, a universal being, All is mind, the universe is mental. Remember, the psyche isn't contained within the cranium. It's omniscient, omnipresent. It's absolutely everywhere in the universe. And how do we know that to be true? Well, one, you can contemplate and experience a spiritual awakening, so you can experience this a priori.
I'd recommend Googling the placebo effect if you want to see how effective that is.
But if you want sense perception, then I'd say check out the experiments of Wilhelm Reich, who clearly showed that if you just simply heat up inert materials like coal, iron filings, and sand to insanely white hot temperatures and then cool them down, spontaneously all these life forms start to emerge. Now, how's that happen?
Yeah, here's a fun fact about that experiment. When Reich allowed a Norwegian pathologist by the name of Lev Kryberg to actually examine the preparations made under a microscope, he determined that it was most likely airborne bacteria that Reich was observing, as opposed to spontaneous generating life.
Similarly, you might look at evolution and just think, well, how do these beings come to be? How is it that a giraffe's neck is so long? Why do elephants have trunks? Well, it's because evolution is the physical byproduct of amending desires in consciousness, right?
Not even close to right. Evolution is the end result of random mutations being passed along the gene pool because they are determined to be beneficial for the survival of that species. Evolution has nothing to do with desire, because evolution in of itself is not conscious. It is the name for a process that takes place slowly over billions of years. Tell me, if evolution was really about amending desires, why would there ever be such a thing as a non-beneficial mutation? For that matter, why would mutations only occur in offsprings? The offspring doesn't have any kind of desire while it's in utero. For that matter, if it is about desire, why wouldn't a parent be able to will a child to have a certain genetic code? And there are several more issues with this idea that I'm not getting into right now because, to be blunt, it's utterly nonsensical on every level. Anyway, after this point, he just gives some platitudes and the video ends. So, final thoughts? For a video that said it was going to debunk atheism, it really didn't even attempt to. And when you can't trust the title of a video, what can you trust? Good night, and good luck.